you for tuning in to another episode of the Collision Vision driven by Auto Body News. As always, I'm your host, Cole Strandberg. Today's guest is Jordan Beshears, Vice President of Steve's Auto Body, a two-store and growing operation out of the St. Louis area. Jordan and I discuss a ton in this episode, including how Steve's Auto Body has grown to where it is today, the dynamics of family business, OEM certifications versus DRPs, some exciting growth plans in the works, and a whole lot more. Enjoy the show. Jordan Beshears, thank you so much for joining us here on the Collision Vision.
Hey, Cole. Thanks for having me.
Man, looking forward to a fun conversation. Always love talking to kind of dynamic leaders of collision organizations because there are so many different routes we can go down. And I guess let's start by saying, hey, let's hear about your background. How did you get where you are today?
Yeah, I think that it may be a little bit different than a lot of people in the industry, maybe not from my generation, but definitely from the generation prior to me. My father's been in the industry since he graduated high school. He literally got his first job 2 weeks after he graduated high school. I played college soccer at a fairly high level. Never in my life had any desire to enter the industry. I had a little bit too much fun playing college soccer, so I had to come back home and went to a local university where I got my degree in finance. And while I was finishing up, started working at the shop part-time. Started cleaning cars, ended up working in the paint shop. And at that time, my parents did not own the company. It was owned by the founder of the company. So I graduated. My intent was to go into the financial world, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do yet. And the opportunity came up for my parents to purchase the company. So they decided to do that. And at that time, I took a step into the office, began writing estimates, wrote estimates for a while, then got into the production side of things, started learning production, did parts. We were kind of a stereotypical body shop, wore a lot of hats. And in the meantime, I was learning the financial side of the business very early in the morning and very late at night. So that was not disrupting my day-to-day, which kind of led us to where we are today.
Beautiful. And a great segue. First off, though, there are so many routes I could go down, and we'll talk some family business here a bit later in our conversation. That's one of my favorite topics, selfishly. The other piece is the commitment to understanding the financial piece of the business. And I think we'll talk about how that's been important in your continued growth and success within the business and for the business. Tell us about where Steve's Auto Body is today.
Yeah, so it kind of starts back in 2017. I had grasped the admin side of the business through estimating, the production, all that stuff. And I approached my dad and I said, I'm itching to buy another shop. Let's buy another shop. And he said, that's great. I will support you in doing it, but I'm not doing any of the work, which at the time was a little bit of a gut punch, but it was great. So I began to realize that at that time, if we wanted to grow, we had to figure out a way for me to be able to take a step back from the day-to-day. And we began talking with PPG, who's our paint distributor, and they brought up their Greenbelt training, which is a lean training based off the Toyota way presented by their MVP Solutions team. So at the end of 2017, we went to our first Greenbelt training. It was me, our production manager, our lead painter, and a structural technician. And that completely changed the trajectory and vision for the company. So we came back from that, did our first 5S workshop a few weeks after we came back, and we focused on that for a while. And then about 6 months in, we started disassembling cars correctly through a process that we call X-ray repair planning. And, that we were starting to see some great traction with that. Cars were flowing through the shop better. And as we solved that problem, we would find new problems that we had to solve. So then we, tackled the issue in the paint shop, because we were having bottlenecks with our paint booth, just like many people do. And we brought PPG in to do some training again. And we created a pull system through our paint shop, which allowed us to go down to one booth essentially, and it increased our throughput by about 30%. So we really started seeing some great traction then, and it was early 2020 we decided, everything was really rolling downhill, everything was going great. We had a target acquisition in mind, and we began negotiations. And then, as everyone knows, in early 2020, COVID happened. So that kind of, put a stall on negotiations, because at the end of the day, we had to make sure that our original location was still in good standing.
Sure.
We're in the St. Louis market, but our shops are in Illinois. Illinois, had some pretty stringent lockdowns, and our original location is also by a huge Air Force base that was also shut down. So there was a point in time, I think it was April of 2020, we were doing a whip count at the end of the month, and we had 3 cars on site. So it took us about 6 months to stabilize. We got stabilized then, and then we began negotiations again and closed on our second location Q1 of 21. We learned a lot, which was awesome. I like to say, the first 18 months was complete failure, which was great learning opportunities. It wasn't failure like catastrophic to the business, but it was failure that, the business was operating essentially as when we bought it. We had another kind of mini COVID shutdown, so work was dry. We had some older technicians that didn't buy into the way we were doing things. So about 18 months in, we had completely changed over the production staff. We had gotten rid of everyone that worked there. It wasn't our intention from the get-go, but they weren't buying into our vision for the company. From a sales perspective, it wasn't doing that strong. And then you fast forward 18 months later to now, and we have a whole new staff. We've doubled revenue and tripled profitability. And we are in the process of doing a greenfield expansion for our third location that should be open by the end of this year.
Awesome, man. Well, what a story. And I appreciate the insights around COVID and kind of that first 18 months and feeling a bit like it was failing. I think it's funny you say that, because anyone from the outside would look at the organization and say, come on, no way. But the truth is, and part of the goal of the Collision Vision, and I think we've done it, is a lot of really great organizations in this industry, in any industry, that from the outside seems so smooth and successful. From the inside, it feels like you're putting out fires all day, every day, and building the plane as you're falling down to the ground and figuring it out. And I think at the end of the day, even the best organizations feel that way internally.
Yeah, I agree. We actually, we host a lot of tours for PPG for people trying to go through process improvement. And we actually had one for a dealership. I think it was on Wednesday, and they were going through some struggles. And one of the things that I told them is, and it took us a while to figure this out, but sometimes, the saying, you're too far in the forest to see the trees. That's extremely evident. We feel like that our problems seem so big, but sometimes they're so small. Like X-Ray forgot, 2 clips, and we had to, like, at the end of the day, compared to what our problems were 6 years ago, that wasn't a problem 6 years ago. And there are always opportunities to get better. So, it's an interesting way to look at it.
Absolutely. So set the stage. Your family took over the business when it was one location. Today you have 2. What exactly is your role within the company? What's the rest of the family's involvement? Like, just kind of paint a picture of exactly where we are today as a business.
Yeah. So I basically oversee both locations. I'm in charge of our location leaders. I'm in charge of the vision for the company moving forward, land acquisition, kind of all that stuff. I like to joke, my dad is definitely on his way out. He's almost a full-time grandpa now.
Nice.
So he's at a really good stage. And then my mom is still handling, the books and all the financials of the company. But we are kind of in the process of working them into a retirement phase. so they can enjoy the rest of their life and not have the stress of the business anymore.
That is what it's all about, man. A lot of really good lifestyles and lives have been created in the collision repair industry, especially through entrepreneurship within the collision repair industry. So today you're at 2 locations. There's some plans of expanding that a little bit. So talk to me about some growth strategy. You've obviously gotten 1 acquisition under your belt. Sounds like there might be some dabbling with greenfields going on as well. And I want to compare and contrast from your perspective those 2 avenues.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We have friends in the industry, and that there's a right or a wrong answer. We see our vision moving forward through greenfield and potentially brownfield. Our process has dictated kind of the footprint that we need for a collision center to operate the way that we want it to operate. And what we learned through our acquisition was our opinion. We bought an existing business that had people that weren't bought into our culture. We bought an older piece of real estate and older equipment. So, it took us 18 months to turn that around. We're still reinvesting in equipment. We had to learn the footprint and adapt that to our system. So it wasn't a super fast process for us. We're also in an area, we were actually beginning to target another acquisition, and a big consolidator came in and swooped it up. So, at some point we always knew that we would go the greenfield route, but it sped it up. You definitely learn a lot, but from our perspective, we're going into a new facility that's designed exactly how all of our people understand cars to flow through a facility. It's a beautiful building with, climate controlled. Everything's brand new and working. All the equipment's brand new and going to last for numerous years. So there is some upfront, capital that's required for it that may be higher than acquisition. But our perspective is the vast majority of that's in the real estate, which I would prefer it to be in as opposed to the equipment. And I think that we'll be able to hit the ground running through our partnerships faster than going in and trying to turn over an organization and get it to operate the way that we want it to.
So many things to love, and I think there's benefits on both sides. Talk to us. I think it's still pretty early stage on your greenfield ventures, but walk us through that process for those who haven't taken the leap into greenfielding.
There's a lot of things around the corner that you don't necessarily foresee. It's went a little bit slower than I anticipated, but it basically took us a year in the design phase. So we're going to be from land target to doors open about 14 months, which I can live with. I've learned a lot about construction. We've made some great connections on the real estate side in terms of land for future acquisitions. It is extremely frustrating sometimes going through the permitting process, but I think especially with the greenfields too, one of the things that we like is it doesn't restrict us. We don't have to have a shop that's a certain size in a certain market that is selling at a certain time. We can kind of dictate where we want to go on our own time frame. So that gives us, in some crazy aspect, a little bit more flexibility. And our goal would be, we went through a lot of hurdles this first time, but we're going to plan to replicate the exact same shop again with some minor changes. So all that upfront time on this initial should not happen with the fourth location and so on and so on. And we'll also be able to drive down cost from an engineering perspective, from material perspective, everything, as we continue to hone in on the same type of design in our future endeavors.
Absolutely. Makes total sense. And I think it's such a great tool for shop owners to kind of have in their back pocket, even if they're acquisitive, to be able to pivot to the greenfield and brownfield route in a lot of cases can make total sense. You get to build that exactly how you want. You don't have to settle for equipment you don't like, for a layout that's less than optimal. You can really design it to your specifications. And as you continue to grow your organization, I'm sure that'll evolve too over time. You might find some things that in reality, hey, this wasn't so perfect.
Yeah, I have a long-term vision for the company, but in my opinion, it's kind of silly, make 5-10 year plans, because you use the perfect word. You have to be able to pivot. So we kind of try to like to focus on the 3 years, and let's knock down those targets and then set a new 3-year plan, because our vision hasn't changed as a whole, but where we see the company going has definitely changed as things have begun to evolve with our own company and with the industry. It's created some new opportunities and kind of given us a different perspective on where we could be long term. So I definitely think you have to be, the phrase that we like to use is firm but flexible. We're firm in our belief but flexible in our methods to achieve our goals. So I think that's very important as well.
Love that line. Yeah, that's fantastic. And you talk about kind of the future of the organization and some key strategies there. But before we jump into that, one last thing on kind of the greenfield. I think from a lot of business owners' perspective who are in that growth mode, they look at, greenfielding. We can figure out the building, we can figure out all that stuff, and might even be fun. The challenge for a lot of folks is understanding and wrapping their mind around, how do we staff it? That's a conversation that we have across this industry every day, the technician shortage and the shortage of talent. I know it's early in your greenfield process, but you seem like a man with a plan. What's the strategy there for when that is ready to go?
So that is definitely, when we started this process, there were two things that we had to figure out: is how do you get work in the door and how do you staff it? Through our relationships and just the location of the new location, like the physical location, it's right next to a massive dealership that we have a relationship with. So the work aspect will not be an issue. The staffing, obviously, same for us as everyone else in the industry, potential issue. The good thing about our process is we're not tech dependent. We have, entry level technicians disassembling and reassembling cars. We have B level technicians, and we obviously have A level technicians. We're also big because we're so process driven on promoting from within. We've actually found that the people that work for us understand how we do things. If they don't have the skill set, we can almost teach them the skill set faster than getting some people that have historically done things a certain way to change their mindset. So for instance, we had to let go our painter at our second location without hesitation. We had a prepper at our first location. We were like, let's throw him into the role. He's been a great employee for us. He understands how we want cars to flow through the paint shop. He's painted a little bit. He's definitely doesn't have a lot of gun time, but we're going to give him the opportunity to shine, and he's doing great now. So we have, C techs that are able to move into the new location. We have some B techs that will be able to shift between the locations, and our paint staff is actually, we're a little bit overstaffed right now, so we're fine from a paint perspective. So right now and we're about ready to start, really hitting the ground with this, and they're not easy to find, but we do need a few high level body technicians. And then, we'll be able to ramp up from there. I don't see the admin side being as much of an issue. We already kind of have an idea of who our location leaders are going to be, and they kind of are coming from within. We're promoting. So from the admin side, we have to fill some lower level positions. And then on the body technician side is the biggest holdup. But the paint side, we're good right now. So you kind of got to be flexible with that too, because we don't know for sure what technicians we're going to be able to get in. So we don't know exactly how it'll be staffed from a number perspective, because it depends on those high level A technicians and who we can get in the door.
Makes total sense. No, that's awesome, man. We'll look forward to hearing about your journey as it continues on the greenfield path. I think we might have to have you back on once that's all said and done. Another exciting growth avenue that is in the works, and would love for you to share what you can about it. You view a key growth avenue for your company as the ADAS calibration route. Talk to us about where that's headed.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a very hot topic in our industry. We had to have a lot of upfront capital for the build out of the greenfield. So we have been using a third party for all of our ADAS right now. I don't think that it's perfect, but we're doing the best that we can with it. And an opportunity came up for a piece of land through somebody that we've done a real estate transaction previously with, and it was a deal we couldn't pass up. So the offer was presented to us on a Friday, and I think by Tuesday we had a signed contract on a piece of land. We don't know for sure what we're going to do with the land yet, but it kind of makes sense to build a standalone calibration center in it, especially with the third facility coming up and being up and running. I think by the time that's running, we'll be able to fill the calibration center with only our work. I don't really have a desire as of now to do retail work with other body shops on the calibration standpoint. But I think at that size, it makes sense to kind of vertically integrate and bring all of our calibrations in-house so we can control that as we continue to grow.
Very cool. Definitely a hot topic. Definitely not inexpensive to do it right, but I think that's a great point. If you're not reliant on other parties and you have 3 shops with the volume to keep your ADAS calibration facility productive and profitable, I think that's a very, very interesting growth lever to pull.
Well, and I think that kind of going the greenfield route has had us have a different view on the calibration standpoint, because the build out of the building is going to be way more cost effective because it's a way simpler building. That necessarily the aesthetics don't necessarily have to be as nice because it's going to be more of a business to business portal, not retail customers coming in. And then also from an equipment standpoint, yeah, there's some cost, but relative to a collision center, it's very minor, especially for the cash that it can generate.
100%. I think it's a super unique business. It's something that people are talking about more and more. And it seems the operators who get involved in that business are the ones who are really willing to make the investment to make sure it's done right. And the fact that you guys are in position to do that's very cool.
Yeah, the struggle that we had early on with it was like, there's great margin in it, but if the sales aren't there, the dollars aren't equating to that much. But now that we're getting to a point where, you could see some big dollars coming in, and just the sheer number of calibrations that we would have to be doing for the 3 facilities, it kind of makes sense. Maybe not, next month, but in the near future, it definitely makes sense for us to venture into the calibration business.
Very cool. And to get again from your own pool is super interesting of collision repair clients. Talk to me about your viewpoint kind of and your focus on OEM certifications versus maybe those DRP relationships. We have another hot topic here that I'm throwing at you.
I love this question. I'm smack dab in the middle. I think that, we have a Tesla certification, and we're in the process of getting GM certified. I think we love Tesla. It's been an amazing relationship. One of the reasons I like Tesla is because it's restrictive. We also have great relationships with our direct repairs. I know that, I think sometimes it's hard for the industry to take a look in the mirror. I'm not saying insurance companies are perfect, but I think at the end of the day, if you take care of customers and you do good work, are they going to complain about some stuff you do and maybe have some conversations? Yeah, but I think that they're happy as long as you're, fixing cars in a timely fashion, taking care of customers, and doing good work. Obviously, there's some other conversations that happen, but sometimes as an industry, we're just not great operators, and we want to point the finger. And sometimes I think we need to take a look in the mirror. We have great relationships with our insurance companies. On the same token, we will not, partner with every insurance company. There's some that need not be said that they don't want to achieve those goals, and then there's some that do want to work with you. So we're kind of in the middle. I think that we'll continue, especially with the greenfield route and helping generate revenue and getting cars into a brand new facility. We will continue to have our insurance partners, and I think that we will continue to do some OEM certifications as well. I see some benefits to it. One of the things that I struggle with is on the certification side, the ones that aren't restrictive. I don't want to name names, but there's a big consolidator in the industry that just got, 2 blanket certifications at the drop of a hat. So to me, I don't know how that's necessarily making us stand out, but I do see value in it. So I'm kind of the belief that I think that you can make both work. But at the end of the day, it comes down to everything in business. You have to operate at a high level if you don't want your providers to be beating on you. If we were performing poorly for Tesla, they would be having the same conversations with us, that maybe in some different topics, but if we weren't taking care of customers and we were constantly calling them with issues, they wouldn't appreciate us as a partner either. So I think you can make both work. It's just you got to look at it with a different perspective. And I think that depending on your growth strategy, different things work for different organizations as well.
Absolutely. And a great segue into, we've talked about the history of the company. Talk about the future. What is your vision for the future? We know kind of what the next maybe year or so looks like. Talk to me about beyond that.
Yeah, I think that with my parents transitioning out, I obviously have a financial background, but I don't have the time to understand it and know every aspect of the financials as well as I should. So we're actually going to be bringing on a CFO at the beginning of the year. And we want to get this first greenfield under our belt, get it cash flowing, and as soon as we can get it to start cash flowing, work on the fourth one. And like I said, I don't like to talk about long-term goals, but I think in the next 5 years we would like to be at a standpoint that we can start building a shop a year, maybe 2 every 3 years, so 1 every 18 months, and really just expand through the greenfield and potentially brownfield routes. Not to say we're anti-acquisition, but that's not necessarily in our long-term outlook. It would have to definitely be a perfect fit for everyone involved.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Opportunistic, but I love it, man. Kind of zigging while others are zagging, going the organic route. I think there's a lot of runway there, and I think it's very smart to be looking in that direction. Talk to me too. I never miss a chance to talk about family business, and talk to me about how that all kind of came to fruition, how it was working with the family. You hear all ends of the spectrum, from horror stories to, oh my gosh, it was perfect. What was your experience like?
I was thinking about this before we jumped on, and the simplest way that I could put it out there is it's life. It's no different than life. It's we have some very high highs, and there's some difficult times. So I think what I have to take a step back and realize sometimes is me and my parents are in completely different phases of our life. And we want different things for ourselves individually, and I think that's completely fine. At the end of the day, we're all extremely fortunate to be in this position and have had this time to work and grow this company together. It definitely hasn't been the easiest, but it's been a great ride, and I think that everyone will be taken care of for a very long time. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't change anything. I think maybe I would change some things that I say from time to time, but like in terms of actually entering into business with my parents, I wouldn't change anything. But there are difficult times, but I mean, that's just life. At the end of the day, when you take the business out of it, we have a fantastic relationship. We hang out all the time. They're constantly around my kids. So we haven't let the business ever affect the things that really matter in our life, which is extremely important. So not to say there haven't been bumps along the road, but that's natural.
Oh, absolutely, man. That's what it's all about, though. Keep the main thing, keep that relationship outside of the office place strong. And it sounds like that's kind of the ultimate measure of family business success in my mind. Is there anything we haven't talked about? You've been very generous with your time, but before we start getting into kind of wrapping up things and the 3 key takeaways and all that stuff, is there anything we haven't discussed that we should?
I do not think so.
Awesome. Hey, that means I did my job. We covered a lot, and with that, I think these 3 key takeaways might be a bit challenging, but as you know, we do like to end each episode of the Collision Vision with 3 key takeaways. What are those in your mind today?
Yeah, I think first off, you have to trust your vision, but be able to pivot off of that vision. So that doesn't mean you change your end goal, but you have to be flexible. I think that a lot of times I see people in this industry that maybe, they're like, oh, well, this guy down the road's doing this, or my friend over in this market's doing this, we're going to do that. In reality, it might not work for you. And if you you don't stay true to what you want to do for your company, I think it slows you down at the end of the day. So be completely okay with doing things a different route if you believe that that's the best way to do things. The second thing is, and I think this is, I mentioned this to you before when Spencer Ward was on, that was one of my favorite episodes, is learn the value of your real estate. I think it is extremely overlooked in our industry, and it's something that we value a ton. From a greenfield standpoint, from our existing locations, I think that it creates a great asset. And also gives you extreme flexibility and some things that you can do with real estate if you really understand how to leverage your real estate. And the third thing, I think somebody else has mentioned this before, but it has been extremely beneficial to me, is network. And when I say network, I don't just mean in the industry. I think it's great to network in the industry, but I think it's awesome to network outside of the industry as well. I have a very close friend who is involved in real estate at a very high level, and he has taught me more than I could ever dream of real estate. He has also, introduced me to some new banking partners. We actually found our architect through him on some build outs that he did. And then, when you meet those people, they've introduced us to other people that have allowed us to expand our horizons from a business perspective. So I think that it's important to network in the industry, and I have some great relationships in the industry, but I think it's also important to open your eyes to other aspects, because there's times when, you might need a commercial real estate guy, you might need an attorney, you might need a contractor. You never know who you're going to need and who can get you a connection to get a problem solved sooner with a great outcome. So I think that's extremely important for people as well.
All great stuff. Jordan, where can people get in touch with you, follow along with your journey?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn, which you can tag me on that, Cole, and you can put out my email as well.
I will do it. It'll be in the show notes. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on the show. I thought it was a fun conversation. Look forward to watching as you continue to grow and build a fantastic business. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Cole. Keep up the great work.
Thanks again to Jordan Beshears of Steve's Auto Body for an awesome conversation. These episodes with business owners who are in the trenches every day are so much fun because there's virtually no part of the collision industry that's off limits. Jordan gave us a real feel for the ups and downs of his business, which is important for us to hear. It's not always smooth sailing, and how his plan for growth is firm but flexible. Firm in the goal, flexible in the methodology. Jordan's 3 key takeaways were also uniquely actionable, and those were: number 1, trust your vision, but be able to pivot. Know where you want to go, but be willing to take advantage of the unique opportunities that pop up along the way, and be willing to adjust to how you reach your end goal. Number 2, be sure to learn the value of your real estate. Real estate can be an incredible asset. And Jordan gave us a nice shout out to the Spencer Ward episode of the Collision Vision. I'll be sure to link that in the show notes, because if you want to learn more about the collision repair real estate space, you need to give that episode a listen. Lastly, be sure to network both inside and outside the collision repair industry. Inside the industry, the benefits are pretty obvious. It helps immensely to know and be known. But Jordan's point about networking outside the industry and within the community rings very true, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. But that's all for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give us a follow and leave us a nice review wherever you enjoy your podcast, or on YouTube, where the Collision Vision now lives in video form. As always, on behalf of Auto Body News and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.